Mandy, great to see you as always. And I always say this, thank you for taking a bit of time out to come and have a chat with me because I know you're pretty busy. Let me kick off with something that some people will be shocked by. You claim to be psychic, and you claim that being psychic helps you deliver your kind of coaching business all around the world. Just tell people about what you mean by that. And why is that important to you?
I love it, Paul. Well, it's so interesting because since I was a little girl, I was fascinated by psychics. My mom got me this book written by a psychic, and I was like, that is the coolest skill set ever. When you'd ever play the game with your friends, if you could have any superpower, what superpower would you have? And people would say, I'd be invisible, or I would know the
Yeah.
winning lottery numbers, and I was like, I would love to be psychic. And it was more of like, I wanted to be able to tell the future. And now, what I've realized is that so how this identity came to be, Paul, is that I've geeked out on personality assessments in my early 20s. And when I say geeked out, I mean nerd geeked out, because they changed my life, which I can share that story in a minute if it's appropriate. And I got the feedback from other people going, okay, you're spooking me, Mandy. It's like I'm talking to a psychic. And all I was doing, to be totally transparent with you, Paul, is I was reading their assessment results. That's it. Like I wouldn't, let's say if you took assessments and I never met you and I just looked at your results, I'd say, well, this is what you're like. This is probably the challenges you've experienced in your life. This is probably what's really natural and good for, that you're great at. And this is probably where you suck and you don't like. And I spooked people with that. And they started calling me, oh my gosh, it's like you're psychic. And I would reply with, I wish that's my, like, I wish I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after so much time in the saddle, and you know how when you spend so much time studying people and so much time being in this conversation, an intuition developed within me. And now I can look at someone's results and I could talk to somebody and it's because of a quarter of a century of doing this that I've developed an intuition that is really right on, and I could rely on it and I trust it, and that's where I get more intel than simply the assessment gives me. And that's where I've begun to realize, oh, that dream that that little girl had of being psychic has in a way come true because I've studied people and their psyche. You think of that word psychic and it's understanding the psyche. So it's less about predicting the future and it's more about understanding the human that I'm connecting with. And I'm very, very grateful for my journey with that. And I feel a responsibility to inspire others to understand themselves on this deeper level because it's a game changer.
Sure. So, well, let's pick up. Let's just follow that line that you've just mentioned there. I mean, tell us about what because you're taking that sort of intuition that you've developed and turning it into something that you can scale globally. And tell us about what you're trying to achieve.
So, what I'm trying, and I got to give credit where credit is due. My dear friend Russell Brunson, he's the founder and the visionary for understandingpersonality.com. What we're doing is first and foremost is, Socrates, Paul, know thyself. How can we, and
Mhm.
I always like to give the disclaimer, Paul, that there's no assessment on planet Earth that can encompass the depths and the complexity of who you are as an internal soul. So let's just get that out of the way. Like it's not about giving our power away over to assessments. They're not the end all be all. I look at them as a puzzle piece. And what's really in my heart is to inspire people to love themselves. And I know that may sound a little corny and a little cliche, but it really comes down to that self love. And what is love? It's unconditional acceptance. We live in a culture, it's very, very challenging to unconditionally accept who we are and ourselves. And a lot of that is because of our own ignorance. we don't understand. It's like, imagine being in a car that you don't know anything about cars, and you don't know how to use the sunroof, and you don't know how to use the heated seats, and it's because you never were taught. It's like we're in these human bodies and we don't know how to utilize the gifts that we've been given and the challenges and lessons that we're meant to learn. And once that clarity comes, it's kind of like the Buddha said, pain is inevitable, suffering's optional. Being human, you're going to have pain. That's unavoidable. But I do believe the more that we know and understand ourselves, the less suffering we experience.
Sure, and that sounds to me to be a pretty good thing. And just for people that don't know about what you do, I mean, tell us the role that technology plays in delivering that.
You know, it's interesting because I felt so drawn to your podcast, and it was so funny because my intuition was like a pie, but like I see the word technology and I'm like, I'm not, I had the identity for so long of, you've sure you've heard people going, I'm not techie.
Mm.
And what technology plays is having this software where I can look up, I just did a coaching session right before our podcast here, and I looked up his profile, client's profile, and he has all his assessment results, his DISC, his values, his Myers-Briggs, his love languages, his strengths,
Mm.
his Enneagram, all, and I could boom, just see it right there. And I was like, whoa, this is, I told him he was a visionary on crack, because I could just see
Mm.
his strengths and how intense he was. And then he shared with me how he was struggling in his marriage and he's struggling with his relationship with his kids. And without knowing his background and his story, I immediately knew why. And I was able to offer compassion because what made him so great in business is really making it challenging for his interpersonal relationships. So, to go back to your question about technology, I would not have been able to, within minutes, be able to pinpoint what he needed to understand about himself and why he was so genius and brilliant in business and why he struggles so much in relationships had I not have the technology of seeing all his results in one snapshot.
So technology enables you to deliver better services, really. That's what you're saying.
100%.
Let me ask you about, if you like, being the CEO. I mean, my friends tell me, building a business, being the CEO, leading a business. I mean, it's a bit of a roller coaster. You have good days and you have days that aren't so good. I mean, what is it about this that motivates you to kind of get out of bed every day and carry on doing what you're doing? Because it's a tough gig building a global
Yeah.
business.
It really is. And yes, there's some days, I'm sure you've had them too, where it's like,
Yeah.
I wish I could just be a Starbucks barista, and just like, why can't I just clock in and clock out? But it's a fire, it's a spirit that's inside each of us that feel called. And what motivates me is working with clients. Like I had one of my first clients, he was from Chicago. I swear it was Robert. It was what's his name? He's in all like the movies. It wasn't him, but
Yeah.
it was, yes, De Niro. The man sounded like De Niro. It wasn't De Niro, but just, and he had like he was a very direct person and he was
Yeah.
really intense. And I was always like a little nervous before my call because I was like, oh my gosh. And he was a 100% D, what that means, dominant personality, and everything else was low. He was brilliant in business and he was going through a possible divorce. And he said, this is my soulmate, Mandy. I can't lose her. I don't know what I'm doing. And he called me kiddo because he knew I was really young. And he's like, all right, kiddo, what can you do? What can you help me with? And all I did, Paul, was read him his disc results. That's all I did is I just interpreted his results. And I said, without knowing your wife and without knowing her results, this is what I would strongly guess that might be happening in your marriage. And always remember because he was a talker and he always interrupted and he was, he got bored very easily. If I had to be very careful about my stories. I couldn't go off on any long tangents with him. And I'll always remember there was a pause. And this was back in the day before Zoom, which is good old fashioned phone call. And I thought I might have lost him because he never paused. But I remember this pause, and I'll always remember what he said after his pause. He said, "Kiddo, you know me better than my therapist after 2 years of going to therapy." And he was so impressed with the knowledge of what I gained by just looking at his assessment results. And then we got his wife to take it and we got her on. And I remember there was a lot of laughter because it was like, oh my gosh, no wonder. Yes, no wonder he could come across like an a-hole sometimes. And this is what he needs. But it wasn't him, it was his personality. And my favorite thing, Paul, is that once we understand ourselves, there's so much less shame and conflict because we don't take things as personally. Because it's not about willpower and going, Paul, just take things less personally. No, you legit understand why it's not about you.
Mm.
And that is why I do what I do, because of relationships, whether they're interpersonal relationships, whether it's being the CEO and a coworker or an executive partner or a spouse or a child, is nothing heals relationships like understanding more of who you are.
Mm. I mean, and let me ask you about one dimension to that. I mean, communicating with people. I mean, it can really help things, and if you get it wrong, it really doesn't help, does it? I mean, what are your thoughts on? I mean, because you deal with all sorts of different people that come to you for all sorts of different reasons, which means that you can't communicate in very simple ways. It's quite complex. I mean, what's your take on that kind of communication process in terms of what you do?
Yes, such a brilliant question. One of the things I'm really grateful for is when I first became a coach and I got to work with Tony Robbins at 21 years old. And we did an exercise that was really awkward and funny, but it changed me in that we got to role play different personalities that weren't our own. So it's kind of like an acting exercise, but it
Right.
was a way of, instead of like learning German or learning Chinese. So for me, I'm a lower dominant personality. I'm not naturally direct and let's get to it and results. That's not me. But when I'm coaching someone, I know, okay, what would you like to focus on? Okay, let me bottom line this. And then I do my best to actually bottom line it. What result? And I always bring it back to the result because they're driven by that. And so, what saved me as a coach, because I had very little life experience, Paul, and I'm so grateful there wasn't Zoom because I was 21, but I looked 12. There's no way I. What saved me was I knew how to communicate differently to, let's say, a high D versus when I had a super high I, those are the people that are talkers. I knew I needed to hear their stories.
Mm.
I knew I needed to hear how cute their golden retriever was, that was important to be able to gain rapport. And then I can talk about how cute my golden retriever was and is and how, and then we could bond. But if I did that with a high D, they'd be like, are you kidding me? I don't have time to talk about how cute your golden retriever is. Right. So it's understanding that, it's understanding what people need and how to communicate with them. And now I've had so much time in the saddle with it that it comes more natural, but I really had to work at it.
Mm.
Um, and I still find new things like Myers-Briggs. Like I'm a feeler and there's a lot of thinkers I have as clients. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known this, 15 years ago, where I would go, Paul, how does that make you feel? And if you were a thinker, you go, I don't know. But
Yeah.
if I said, Paul, what do you think about that? And then it'd be like,
Yeah.
and just that one little thing of just knowing, oh, I'm a feeler. I feel comfortable with that. If you ask me what I think, it's such a disconnect. And
So what?
so
So
it,
what, just to clarify, so what you're
yeah,
saying is understanding what matters to the recipient is really how you learn to, is how you communicate best. You understanding what works for them rather than what works for you. Yeah.
well, I'm so glad you point that out because sometimes people jump ahead too fast. The first person to understand is yourself.
Mm.
So, like, I first geeked out and really understood myself and understood my world and who I am. So, I had a home spot. I can't go into your world truly if I don't know how to go back into my own. And so I first needed to understand, what was Mandy great at? What does Mandy suck at? What gives Mandy energy? What drains her? What's her superpowers? What's her kryptonite? Then I'm able to enter all these other different worlds.
Cool. And I mean, I know you've been a very successful communicator. Have you had any failures, any disasters that
Oh, yes.
reshaped
So
you?
absolutely. Um, so one of the things that I've learned to use the DISC language, there's a personality of like the high C, which is high compliance, very, very detailed, analytical people. I'm really low in the C. So you don't want me doing admin or tech and anything that's really detailed. You don't want Mandy doing your taxes. So what happened this was in my late 20s. I had a client who I loved her. She was used to be in the military and she was a very, very high C client. And I had the habit of being late for our sessions. And with high Cs, they're very rules driven. It's all about like following the rules and being compliant with following the rules. My friend Russell jokes that you want high C's on your team because they keep you out of jail. They're like, no, we can't do that. That's illegal. Like they're the ones that know the rules. Well, I was late. I don't know. It was either the third or the fourth time for a session with her. And she canceled the coaching because she was like, I can't trust you, Mandy, because you're late. And it's so important for me that you're on time. And she taught me how important that was and is for people like her. And so it changed me. I was like, okay. And now it's like I pride myself on doing my best. I'm human, but to really respect that rule. And so, in working with people with this personality, I find out as soon as possible, okay, what are your rules? Like, what are your expectations? And if you say, what are your rules, they may not know the answer, but it's just saying, okay, what do you expect from this relationship? What do you want to get from it? What would annoy you? What would give you fear? Because unlike the D's are driven by anger, C's are driven by fear. And so that you could call it a failure. It helped me grow.
Sure. Let me pick up a point that you've just mentioned. I mean, you talked about wanting to have a particular type of person on your team because they keep you out of jail, you know. I mean, and I totally get the logic to that. I mean, what's your take on, I mean, one of the big challenges building a business is getting the right people on the bus, isn't it? I mean, what's your
Yes.
take on that, on getting the right people on the bus? I mean, what's your view about how to do that?
Yes. Something that Keith Cunningham taught Tony, and then Tony taught Russell. And have you ever heard of the three different types of CEOs, the three different types of entrepreneurs?
I've heard of them, but maybe people haven't. So just briefly
Yeah.
explain.
So this really in-depth study was done, and the three men who started Starbucks, and I don't remember their names, so forgive me, but I know that there was a core three of them, and they kind of proved this model is that every business needs to first have a entrepreneur and an entrepreneur business owner type. These are the people like a Russell Brunson who they love the game of business. They
Yeah.
love it. They love the numbers. They are risk takers. They can take the biggest risks that would leave other people who aren't like them, like
Yeah.
in the hospital with an ulcer. So they're huge risk takers. They love numbers. They love the game of business. And that's the entrepreneur type. And they're also known as like the rainmaker. So it's like they can drum the marketing and the sound for getting people to come. And so every business needs an entrepreneur. And then there's another type, which is the manager. And the manager loves operations and systems and things to be organized. They are the masters of taking chaos and putting it in line and having things become a well-oiled machine. But you won't have anything of sustenance. You won't have anything that will be attractive to your business if you don't have the third type, which is the artist. And the artist is so in love with his or her craft. It's like the love of the content. So, to use my friend Russell Brunson as an example, he is a true entrepreneur. He loves the game of entrepreneurship. And then he partnered with his friend Todd, who is the genius behind the software and the technology. Russell could never build the software of ClickFunnels. That's not his expertise. But Todd can. Todd, though, could never make the sound and the exposure that Russell could. And then they've had to hire. He's unfortunately passed, but they had one of Russell's friends, Dave Woodward, that was like the manager and loved the people in the organization. And so you need, I would say, to start wherever you're at with your business, whether you're starting or whether you're at 10 million or 100 million, you need to make sure that you have these areas first
And what
covered.
would you say you are? I mean,
Oh, I'm
you
full
strike me as
blown
about,
artist.
yeah, I was about to say you strike me as an artist from our
Yes.
conversation.
Yes. Full blown artist. Like I'm so in love with the art of the conversation around assessments and people. And I've beat myself up, Paul, that I wasn't more like my friend Russell and so many of my clients. Most of my clients are entrepreneurs and they have like maybe a little bit of art or they're partnered with someone that's an artist and they're looking for managers. And so the mistake that happens is there's people like myself who are artists. I need to be hitched to someone like a Russell. So you probably have heard of, I think, I'm not sure if this was Dan Sullivan or who wrote the book. It's not the what, it's the who. So
Right.
it's like this is where we need that help. And there's so many of my clients, when you talk about that right seat on the bus, who are entrepreneurs, and then they hire someone to be the manager that has the same personality as them. They're not a manager. They're another entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
tend to like people who are like us.
Yeah.
Like I've had a couple of business partners through my career, and now I see the mistake that I made is I partnered with other artists because I like artists. I'm an artist. Artists tend to like other artists, right? I didn't need another artist. I needed a rainmaker. I needed an entrepreneur, and then I needed a manager. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what you're saying is look for one of the other types to join you.
Yes.
And what about so I mean I totally see the logic of that in terms of getting the right people on the bus. What about I mean the next thing I think is a big challenge is creating the right culture or a culture in which people can perform effectively, people can thrive. I mean, what's your take on, you get the right people on the bus. How do you then build a culture around the organization that enables people to thrive? I mean, how do you do that with your people?
It's one of my favorite topics. So you might need to interrupt me. I'm going to warn you because I could just go on and on and on about this. Beautiful, beautiful question. Thank you, Paul. Is it's all about understanding. This is where I geek out even more on assessments because you can build the right culture when you have an obsession with who's on your team.
Mm.
So many like marketers obsess about their avatar, their audience, their customer, and then they don't pay attention at all to their staff and their team. Like if you just took that focus, because whatever we focus on expands, and you focus on who are these people. And one of my favorite things to give you and your listeners a nugget is one of the best ways to build a strong culture where people are as loyal as a soldier that they couldn't even fathom ever leaving you is to understand what they value. Most people speak in their own values and they assume that everyone values what they value. And it's a huge leadership mistake. If you go into your staff and the leaders especially on your team and you know what each of them is their number one value, this is their fuel, this is what drives their soul, that if they don't perceive that this value is being met by the vehicle of the job that they do, they're going to be, excuse me, I've got kittens. um, they will become very dissatisfied. And that's when you hear about like silently quitting and their attitude changing. But if you find out what they value and you enter their world and you help them perceive and believe that whatever work that they're doing is in connection to that value, they're going to become addicted, obsessed about being on your team.
And
And that's an
I
awesome
guess,
culture.
just to clarify, I mean, I guess that is why the relationship between the values of the people on your team and the purpose of the business is so important.
Yes. Yes. So like I have a client where his number one value is leadership. And leadership is responsibility. Leadership is power. And leadership is, and he's obsessed with whatever we tend to value, we tend to be good at. He played a major he had a major leadership role when he was in the military. He's former military, and he was very good at it and he enjoyed it. So that's what he values. He hired someone where their number one value was utility, ROI, baby. Get the money, get the results. It wasn't, he didn't value leadership as much. And they kept butting heads and he didn't understand why. And it says there's most conflicts are values conflict. If
Mm.
he could understand that you're about, he's going to make decisions that are going to be better for him as a leader, that's going to overcome, if it might lose him money, it might have a temporary, backdrop on the ROI, but someone who's high utility, that's non-negotiable. And it's not about better or worse than, but it's about understanding each other's values. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally get that, and I mean, I agree with that actually. In terms of you, what would you say the most important thing have you learned about leadership?
Giraffes need to be with other giraffes. Elephants need to be with other elephants. We need to be in environments that match who we are. There's so many penguins trying to survive in the desert. And I know for myself, uh, I've suffered since I was 11 years old. I'm the best and the healthiest I've ever been, Paul, but I got my first migraine at 11. And I've gone through ups and downs and such a wild health journey. And I studied Dr. Gabor Mate's work with when the body says no and the mind body connection. And I bring this up because what does this have to do with business? Is that Mandy was trying to be someone and thinking that I needed to be like a Tony Robbins and to be like a Russell. And I was making myself have goals and dreams that weren't in my heart. I was the equivalent of, you ever watched those movies where the son is playing football because his dad wants him to play football, but he really doesn't like football? You know, that's what it was for me. Is I thought, oh, I need to become this guru and I need to own a plane and I need to become rich and I need it like, but it wasn't my dharma. It's not what I actually really want. And I had those goals and those dreams. And there's nothing wrong with having goals and dreams, but I had the goals and dreams of someone else, not what's really in my heart. And it took this journey of unlearning and discovering who I really am and what kind of environment makes me happy. Like sitting here talking to you, and I got my soft blanket, I got my tea, our cat had kittens. I have kittens running around here. Like I love this environment. After I'm done with you, I'm gonna take a walk with my guy and our three dogs, and that gives me so much joy. I feel rich. I feel successful because of this. I didn't know that that's what success looked like for me.
Sure. Okay. Uh, let's pick up one of the points that you made there about what constitutes success. I mean, let's in terms of business. I mean, what is it do you think about your business that gives it an edge? What is it that enables you to compete? Because I mean, there's a lot of coaching platforms around, aren't there?
So
I mean,
many. Oh my gosh, you asked the best questions. I'm not stroking your ego, Paul. I'm so excited. This is what gives it an edge. Okay. So what I'm about to say is going to sound controversial. I'm going to warn you. 90% plus of all the platforms and programs out there that are like, we help coaches get clients. We're going to help. And I even have some clients that do it. They don't work. They don't work. And I'll tell you why. Now, they're still making money because they're very seductive. So that's a different conversation. But I'll tell you why they don't work is these marketers. So if we use the example of like entrepreneurs and artists, most coaches are artists. And most of these marketers are entrepreneurs, and they're trying to make coaches become entrepreneurs versus setting them up to win to be the artists that they are. And I like to use animals as an example, as it's like you got these lions trying to teach these penguins how to be lions. A penguin's never going to become a lion, no matter how much money they spend, no matter how many courses. So what gives us the edge? Paul, how I developed a relationship with Russell Brunson, and I've been working with him for the past 15 years, was I simply read his DISC assessment results. That's what I did. I didn't try, I was terrible at selling myself. He even had to say, Mandy, I want to give you money. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like I was so awkward. I've gotten a lot better at it, but my point is most coaches have the personality of wanting to serve, wanting to make an impact, and they love like what I do, connecting with deeply with people. They're not as natural at, hey guys, come jump on my web. That's not as natural for them. Can they do it? Sure, anybody can do anything for a short period of time. But what we've created with understanding personality is giving these coaches something where they get to be themselves to build their business. So instead of trying to be this aggressive lion, this marketer that they're never going to be like, they get to use this platform to be able to enroll clients, to be able to attract clients, because that's what I did. And that's why I'm financially successful to where I'm at. It's not because I became a lion. It's not because I became a marketer. It's because I took this tool of assessments and I had it and I used it as serving others.
Right. Okay. So that, and I can see why that comes across, and I can see why that will give you an edge. I mean, absolutely, I get that. Because what you're really saying is because I've got that tool, and because I'm the person that I am, I'm able to build great relationships with my customers. Is that fair?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you about the kind of process of building, right? I mean, one of the things that I always find interesting when I talk to CEOs is how they work out what to do, but more importantly, what not to do. Because there are a billion things you could do every day. You've only got 24 hours in the day. So the most important thing is to work out how to use that 24 hours most as productively as possible and not do all the other things that could distract you that look interesting and all the rest of it. I mean, what's your take on how you kind of work through, find your way through all the noise that's out there and work out, well, these are the things that I'm going to do? I mean, what's your take on that kind of strategy piece?
Such a brilliant question. Have you seen the movie Jumanji
I
with
have, yes.
yes, so for the listeners who haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Dwayne Johnson, Jack
Yeah.
Black, it's hilarious. If you remember when they enter the video game and they have on the screen like their superpowers and their kryptonite, right?
Yep.
And I love the scene where Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, is holding a piece of paper that's blank to him. And then Jack Black comes and he sees a map. And he's like, "Oh, I see a map." And he's like, "I don't see anything." Right? Well, how we spend our time is knowing what's our superpowers. If we're like The Rock and we can't read a map, and there's no map there, then we need someone like a Jack Black to do that.
Yeah.
So one of the ways, again, to go back to shamelessly plugging our software, I can look at that and say, okay, this is where you need to never do this again. Like if you can just leverage. Like I have one client where I call him my Iron Man. I go, you need to be in a cave and creating and inventing and creating and inventing, and you need a pepper pots. You need a pepper
Yeah.
pots to help you with how to organize because you're gonna forget your dry cleaning. You're gonna forget that because you need to be in the cave and you need to be creating, right? And so once you know your strengths, it's like Russell knows that he needs to be speaking and doing videos as much as possible. If he's trying to lead a management meeting, his energy is going to be drained and
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
that's not his superpower. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. So you're talking about using the people in the right way, and it getting people to play to their strengths and their abilities and stuff. And I totally get that. I mean, I think there's a lot of logic to that. If you're good at understanding what other people's strengths and weaknesses are, of course.
Yes.
Let me just switch your focus a little bit. You've talked a lot about your clients. I mean, what does a good client look like to you?
A good client is ready to get naked, ready to get
Right.
real.
Okay.
Like
On
here
Zoom?
yeah. Yes, like like here is what a good client is someone who has tried almost everything. I find that I tend to attract people who have gone through their Indiana Jones adventure and they're like, I don't know. And there's a humility. It's like the Socrates quote, all I know is I know nothing.
Mm.
And so a great client is genuinely humble, and usually it's because they came in with a strong ego, thought they knew, and then got humbled and humbled. And now they're at a point where, like, okay, I know that it's constant and never ending growth. I know that life is about expansion and growth. And they've made not only a commitment to growth, but I like to say a devotion, because devotion is commitment gone mad, where it's like they are devoted to their growth. People who aren't in that conversation or who don't have that value of devotion to growth, I don't recommend coaching for them, because it will just be awkward and uncomfortable and painful for both the coach and the client. So that's who I look for.
Sure. Okay. Let me ask you about, I mean, working with clients in, I don't know, Canada, different from working with clients in the UK, for example. I mean, there's a kind of a lot of cultural nuances, aren't there? I mean, what's your take on managing, because you're working with people from all over the place. What's your take on how you manage in the context of building up productive relationships? What's your take on the kind of managing those nuances and the different kind of environments, the different jurisdictions that people come from?
Yes, it's one of my favorite things to look at now, whereas before I wasn't as aware. So if you
Mm.
would have asked me this a few years ago, I would have said people are people and we're really not all that different. And although that is true, like we all want to be loved, and we all have our weird way of going for it and asking for it. And what I believe, like where you grew up and your kind of like your ancestry and the context of the culture of where you grew up impacts your goggles. It impacts your perception of how you view others in the world. Like in Australia, they have have you heard of the tall poppy syndrome?
Mhm. But tell
Right?
people, explain it for people.
So, so in Australia, there's the tall poppy syndrome where the tallest poppy gets cut off.
Yeah.
Where, so in Australia, if you stand out, you're out. And we have a biological need to belong. So we'll do the craziest things in order to fit in and belong. So with Australians, I find they have a lot more self-deprecating humor, and they're a lot more easygoing, I find, because there's not this pressure to stand out. Whereas in America, we're like the opposite
Yeah,
pendulum, where we're
yeah.
like, I got to be different. I'm going to stand out, hear myself. I'm going to roar. I better not be like the crowd. Like that's like death to us if you call us basic or common or general. So that's where we're very, very different. Like Australia could use a little American medicine, and America definitely could use some Australian medicine. And so I think it's finding out kind of what is the gift in the wound. You know, every light has a shadow.
Yeah.
Uh, I do find that um, it's really interesting. There's a study done of wherever someone was born, wherever they live, that the more trees someone's around, the more peaceful they are. And so if they're living in an area that doesn't have a lot of trees, it's so important. Like now it's a question I ask all my clients, which I never asked that question before. I'm like, dude, what's the tree situation like where you live? Like, how many trees, how many times do you see trees, you're around trees, you look at trees? And if there's no trees, how can you get to some trees? Because there's this study done about confidence and safety
Mm.
with being around
I mean, there's a
trees.
lot of there's a lot of research that shows that getting out in nature is very good for your mental health, isn't it? I mean,
Yes,
it's very well
100%.
understood that actually, and I certainly feel better when I get out and about out in the country. Let me ask you about different markets. I mean, you touched on Australia, for example, and like you, I mean, I love the Aussies, and I love that self-deprecating approach, and
Yeah,
the kind of the fake cynicism that is among there. It's very entertaining. But tell me about going into new markets. I mean, I speak to CEOs. Some CEOs say to me, "I just follow demand. If there's clients in Australia, I'll just go and work with Australia." Other CEOs say, "Oh no, I go out there. I talk to the marketing people. I do a lot of research." I mean, where would you be on that kind of spectrum? Are you, I'll just dive in, or are you, I do a lot of preparation? I mean, where would you be on that spectrum and why?
Well, it's so interesting because I could already maybe guess some of your personality, Paul. There's some people where they do better with research and they have the
Yeah,
Excel spreadsheets and they do better with that. I'm extremely, we opened this conversation with the psychic question. I'm very intuitive in that I find whoever swims towards me is who I'm meant to help. And it doesn't matter if they're from Dubai or India or Australia or UK. It's like I have so much faith and trust in the way that the world works and the universe works, and that whoever is guided towards me is who I'm supposed to support and to inspire. And then just like you, when we started this before we hit record, and we talked about curiosity
mm.
and think that everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be seen and understood. Some
Heard.
people more than others,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
And and so if you have the ability to be curious, I think it's one of the greatest gifts you can give another human.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And in terms of the way your business has developed, I mean, you've come quite a long way since you started. I mean, would you say that it's evolved because you're now working in lots of different parts of the world? I mean, has it changed the way the business works and the way you do business? Are you evolving?
Yes, it's interesting. I've learned to become grateful and proud of all the Mandys it took to get to where I'm at.
Mm.
You know, there's some that I still kind of go, "Oh, I can't believe I did that," or believed that. But I know that that was a necessary part of my journey. Um, most people who get involved in fields like coaching or fields like therapy, there's usually an unconscious reason that until you become conscious of, it holds you back from being great. And so for me, I was raised by a mother who struggled with a lot of pain and trauma. And the only way she knew how to numb it was alcohol. And I realized that I got drawn to this profession because I wanted to figure out how to save my mom. Now, this wasn't conscious, of course.
Mm.
And so I first started off with kind of like a savior's complex and identity. And now I would say the biggest way that I've evolved at 47 from the Mandy that started at 21 is I know that you have everything within you to
Mm.
grow and evolve as a soul. And you don't necessarily need me, but what I can do to offer value is to be a mirror and to trust that you will be guided. And that's where I use all my tools to help inspire people to trust themselves.
Sure.
So it's coming from a very different place than I did when in my early 20s.
Sure. And let me ask you about that journey. I mean, it's interesting how you described there being multiple different Mandys. I mean, you're very successful now. I mean, what would you attribute that success to?
Who I surround myself with, 100%.
Mm.
It really, I know it's like I'm sure you've heard speakers talk about the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I attribute it to, it was in 2018 that I made a declaration that I was going to do whatever it takes, Imagine Dragons theme song, to heal the migraines. And I spent all my extra income on therapists, healers, flying to places like Peru, doing retreats, like everything I could think of to heal. And without being very, like, I didn't realize it until later that, and I went over my numbers with my financial coach. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at how much I'm spending on I had a girlfriend call it Mandy's entourage. And I had 2 therapists and a healer and an astrologer and a business coach. And you know what, Paul? I needed them all.
Mm.
I needed them all. And so you know how, like, if you got into a really bad car accident, there would be a surgeon, you would have several nurses, there might be a couple surgeons that you might need, right? Well, when it comes to growing and evolving as a human, I'm not saying you got to do my path. My path is kind of like, it was like a Navy SEAL warrior, let's get it all done in a very short period of time path. I don't really recommend it. But it's what all of that did is it taught me that some of the people that I was surrounding myself with, they weren't bad people, but they were holding me back because I couldn't really be myself with them. And going through that transformation and having my entourage, if you will, they were able to mirror back who I really was. And it was very uncomfortable, but I got to a point where now, today, the people in my life, I'm able to be myself with. It doesn't take energy. And so it's so important to look at who you're surrounding yourself with. Do they lift you up or do they sting you? Do they criticize you? Are they angry when you make a mistake?
Mm.
That matters more than anything you could read in a book.
Yeah, no, I mean, I share that actually. I mean, surround yourself with great people. I mean, it doesn't seem to me to be a particularly complicated idea, actually. Let me ask you a couple of other things. I mean, let me ask you about the flip side to that. Very successful now. What's your biggest screw up? What's the biggest mistake?
Oh my gosh. My biggest mistake has been hiding. My biggest mistake has been hiding and hiding behind very powerful people and believing that my biggest mistake is believing there's something wrong with me. The only thing wrong with me, and I say this with clients, is that I thought something was wrong with me. Now, because I've done that, one of the things that was a symptom of that is I was terrible with money, terrible. And
Mm.
so I filed bankruptcy. And here I was, this success coach filing bankruptcy. And I realized what like the bankruptcy was a symptom of hiding, of not believing in myself.
Mm.
And when I started to recognize that and I started to unlearn that pattern, and I'm still unlearning it. I wouldn't say that I'm like, oh, I'm totally healed and perfect. No, but I have an awareness that has allowed me to be seen and to be heard because I was like a professional hider. Because I was afraid that you would see, oh, she doesn't really know what she's talking about. Oh, I had this insecurity that I didn't want to be found out.
Mm.
And that hurt me more than anything
And it
else.
inhibits your ability to learn, doesn't it?
Yes, because it's like I don't want to. I don't know if you've ever been like roller skating or ice skating. It was like I was hanging on to the wall and I wasn't letting myself push off. And you know what? You're gonna fall.
Yeah.
You scrape your knees. And I was so terrified of pushing myself off. And I was like, I'm really good on the wall, really good at it. But I didn't realize until the bankruptcy how much it was actually hurting me and holding me back.
And let me ask you about decision making. I mean, I don't know you that well, but you strike me as somebody who's fairly decisive. I mean, are there any decisions, when you look back on your journey, are there any decisions that you wish you'd made an awful lot earlier?
Oh, yeah. Like not caring so much what people think and spending money. I spent money, Paul, trying to have people like me.
Mm.
I bought dinners when I had no business buying the dinner. I was like acting like I was Frank Sinatra and this was my town. And I would I'd buy everybody dinner and it would be when I had like no, it would like white me. And so it was um my ego of thinking that I had to buy your love and I had to because I felt like who am I? And so the 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 biggest thing is I wish I would have known that I didn't need to do that and I could have invested that money into something that could have compounded down the road, you know. That's what I would say. At the same time, I will tell you at the same time, my guy and I we're building, a future together, my soulmate and I. And we both talk about how we're so grateful that we never, quote unquote, like made millions yet, because we probably wouldn't be together if we had before this point,
Mm.
because of all the things that had to happen for us to be together. And so yes, I would obviously do it differently. At the same time, I'm so grateful for how our journey turned out because now I get to be with the love of my life. And if you or if anybody listening is experiencing that, you know that that's worth,
Mm.
uh, you can't put a price point on it.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Let me ask you a couple of more questions just before we wind up. So, um, if you were to give a rookie CEO some useful advice, what would you tell them?
Become obsessed about knowing who you are. Become obsessed with it. Contemplate. You slow down to speed up.
Mm.
So the more you're going to make choices, we're constantly being hypnotized and influenced. And there are master salespeople and master marketers, and you're
Mm.
going to buy crap you don't need. And it's going to detour, detour, detour. The sooner that you can go and know, this is me, this is what I'm great at, this is what I suck at, the smarter decisions you're going to make around investing your time, money, and energy.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that you can't get back, isn't it? If you waste time on things, you can never get it back. If you waste money, you can make more money. You can't ever get the time back. And really good advice that. Thank you. One final question, which is not really about you and your business, but about the world that you inhabit. I mean, what's your take on the way AI is going to change your world? I mean, you're in that kind of coaching space, which is all about human interaction. I mean, obviously you're doing that via a platform where you've got lots of technology involved. I mean, what's your take on the way AI? Because we're only relatively early in the journey with AI. I mean, what's your take on how that's going to shake down over the next, say, the medium term, next 4 or 5 years?
I think it's going to get weird. I think it's going to get really weird. I don't even know how weird it's going to be. I do know that it's already happening where people are having a hard time understanding the
Yeah.
difference between what's real and what's AI. And I believe that the people who are really grounded in, and I know this term gets so overused, Paul, but your purpose, your higher purpose, and like you
Mm.
know it. It's not just a thing that you post on Instagram to look good. It's like you know who you are. You know that you don't just believe in your purpose, you know that this is exactly why you're here. The more grounded that you are in that, the less things like AI could knock you off. But I think people who don't know who they are and they don't know why they're here, it's gonna get weird. I mean, it already kind of is. And this is where one of my mentors, Richard Rudd, he's from your land, he says that creativity is going to be the number one skill set in demand,
Mm.
um, and allowing yourself to be creative. And do you know what helps you become creative?
Tell me.
Knowing who you are.
Okay.
It's
Should have guessed
because
that.
yes, because creativity is vulnerability, right? It's
Yeah.
it's it's understanding that there's no such thing as a mistake and being childlike. And so I think the bright side of AI can be that we could go back to being more childlike. We're so serious. We became so serious. So it's like if we can allow our space to be more playful and childlike, and you can do that when you know who you are and why you're here.
Yeah. I mean, what a great way to end the interview. Thank you, Mandy. I mean, it's always a joy talking to you, and I always love our conversations. It's very entertaining, very insightful, and I really appreciate you taking some time to come and have a chat with us. And look forward to catching up again soon.
Yes, thank you, Paul. This was lovely. Always a pleasure.
Cheers, Mandy. Bye bye.
Cheers.